Quick summary of Zeitoun. Let's do this. Okay, so we have Abdurrahman Zeitoun, who is our main protagonist. I'll refer to him as Zeitoun for obvious reasons. He was born in the fishing town of Jableh, Syria, but now lives in New Orleans with his wife, Kathy, who was a former Christian who converted to Islam. They have 4 children: Zachary, from Kathy's previous marriage, Nadama, Aisha, and Safiya. Zeitoun owns a painting business, of which his wife acts as a secretary, and they also have a few rental properties in the city. On Friday, August 26th, Kathy begins to hear news about an incoming storm. News of the storm becomes increasingly worse. However, Zeitoun does not seem to be worried at all. Even his brother Ahmad, who lives in Spain, calls to warn him, but regardless, Zeitoun continues to brush these warnings off. Zeitoun comes from a family of sailors back in Jableh, and as a result, he doesn't fear the storm. Later this day, Kathy hears a story on the news in which a family was lost at sea, and this compels her to leave New Orleans. She evacuated along with her children to a parents' house in Baton Rouge. Even with this, Zeitoun refuses to go, as he is obsessed with his work, and he needs to make sure his construction sites and properties will be safe after the storm. The storm makes landfall in New Orleans on the 29th of August. It was as dangerous as the warnings portrayed it to be, however no major damage was actually inflicted. One day later, though, the levees broke, and all of the water that was being held back subsequently flooded into New Orleans. Around 10 feet of water flooded into New Orleans, which submerged most of Zeitoun's house. However, Zeitoun had a canoe that he bought from a yard sale, which he used as transportation. He goes on to rescue some elderly people from their homes and delivers food and water to other survivors. While all this is happening, Kathy is begging Zeitoun to leave, using a phone in one of his rentals to communicate, as she hears horrific crimes taking place in the aftermath of a storm. Kathy is even planning to leave Baton Rouge herself, as her relationship with her parents has not been great since she converted to Islam. Zeitoun teams up with a Syrian immigrant Nasser, one of his tenants Todd, and a guy named Ronnie. Meanwhile, Kathy goes to a friend's house in Arizona to escape her family's Islamophobia. On September 6th, Zeitoun and his group are detained while he's using his phone at one of his rentals. They immediately seize them without looking at any ID. They are subsequently taken to a makeshift prison in a bus station. They're not given a phone call, and on top of this, they are subject to a disgusting body search. This treatment was due to them being suspect of terrorism, since both Zeitoun and Nasser were Muslim, and he carried $10,000 cash along with a map of New Orleans. They are all kept in a concrete cell outside where they're being observed around the clock. Pepper spray is constantly used to keep the inmates in check. Pork is served for dinner, meaning Zeitoun and Nasser can't eat, all while his wife and Zeitoun's family abroad is worried sick about him, putting a lot of stress especially on Kathy. Zeitoun and gang are moved to a proper prison. Eventually, a missionary is able to sneak out a phone call to tell Kathy that Zeitoun is in fact alive. A few hours later, the Department of Homeland Security calls, and they report that they do not have any more interest in Zeitoun and are dropping his charge of looting that they gave him. Zeitoun is taken to court, however, and is given a bail of $75,000 for possession of stolen property. He is not given a phone call as well. Kathy hires a lawyer and goes through a tedious process to prove his innocence by gathering witnesses and documents. His bail is paid and Zeitoun is free. He had lost over 22 pounds and a lot of his hair. After this incident, it is clear that Kathy is not the same person. She has trouble concentrating and remembering facts. In addition to this, they have some trouble with FEMA and a mobile home, which never actually gets connected to water and electricity. Kathy is then diagnosed with PTSD. A lawyer was hired to investigate Zeitoun's detainers, and it was discovered that he was not targeted based on being Muslim, but the malfunction of the authorities after the storm. Reasons are given to justify the police's reactions, and a document of the Homeland Security is shown, which shows the chaos that ensued. The Zeitoun family was finally able to move back into their house by the end of 2008.